It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. We're back live on the Big Mountain.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Mountain. Another live episode, another Wednesday night, another full drink container, and you too.
Woo.
Coming off crazy first 2 months on the mountain here, Steve. We've had interviews, we've had settlements, we've had just all kinds of fun stuff. You know, you think football season's over and things are going to slow down. And I told everybody we have a big 2025 planned, and I got to tell you, the first 2 months have been even bigger than I envisioned they were going to be. Very fortunate we have Gloria Nevarez able to join us. We're going to talk about that interview at the end of this episode. But other things we want to talk about tonight, we're going to start off with, of course, the ACC settlement. You know, we did a kind of a breaking news, if you will, update on Monday, and then we had Doug Rohan on. He was kind enough to, join us. He sent me a DM, and I'm like, if you want to come on, we'll have you. He's like, let's do it, and love having Doug on. He has great thoughts to share, and yes, he's an FSU guy, but I think he really views it as much as he possibly can with a neutral lens, from the legal side of things. So we're going to talk about, again, AC settlement, the impact of that. I think you have some things, how it might impact the Big Ten and the SEC. Mm-hmm. So just a lot of just conversational tonight. We're not going to go over, last week I did the top 5 games at a conference and all this. Pure conversational tonight. So make sure you get those chats into the chat or comments into the chat. And I see we have a bunch of dwellers already in. We're up to several people. I know it grows over the evening. Jerry from the 605 is here. We've got Tyler Nelson. We got JEH is on. We've got Great. What does that say? Dinkino. What's up, guys? Big fan of the show. Keep up the good work. Good to have you on a live podcast.
Tyler Nelson, he could not wait for this show to start.
Heck yeah. I couldn't either. JEH said I was filling up my beer mug. That's what I was doing.
JH loves the shirt. I love the shirts. Thank you again. The Beeve shirt, built, not bought. Had to wear it tonight and represent JH, so I'm glad you saw that.
We got rumblings in the house. We got that college football guy. Somebody asked if he's going to be here. Yes, he's here. He's in snowy Cincinnati, Ohio.
You never know where Bill, that college football guy, is going to be.
Wasn't he south last week? Wasn't he in Georgia or something?
Georgia, Atlanta, maybe.
I want to say Savannah?
Savannah.
I don't know. Anyway, but Tyler Nelson asks, did I hear about Cal Baptist joining the Big West? I absolutely did hear that. Did a pod on, when did I put that out? Monday. I knew the invite was approved. It was already out there, and I figured they would be accepting it. And the news is that they are accepting it. So yes, was aware of that. Also aware that Utah Valley was given an invitation. And apparently, I'm being told they actually have several invitations that they are contemplating right now. So while I was telling all of our dwellers that both Utah Valley and Cal Baptist were getting invites from the Big West, Utah Valley apparently in high demand. They have several offers coming in. So we'll see if they actually accept their invite to the Big West. Very interesting stuff going on the West Coast. Remember, the Big West backfilling some of their losses that they have because of the Mountain West, UC Davis, Hawaii. Hawaii plays all their Olympic sports there here, so they're going to be moving out of that conference, so they're trying to fill some spots back up. A lot of people thought Cal Baptist may be better in the WCC. They're more private school-based than what the Big West is. But nope, Cal Baptist apparently going into the Big West, and I was told that a little bit of a discussion amongst the board members within the Big West about Cal Baptist. Maybe not 100% agreement, but I'm not going to say any more than that.
I think I like to always bring up wrestling. I think Cal Baptist has a wrestling program because I believe one of Penn State's wrestlers was a transfer from there. So
oh, there you go. All right.
That's where I heard their name.
Okay. Then we've got PDX. Some shout-outs to PDX. We got Hard Rockin' Trivia Show. C-Sun in the house. I know Hard Rockin' has been with us here for quite a while live. Good to have you. Always commenting on our shows. Really, really appreciate that. Al Walker, live feed. Wow, yeah, buddy. Al, we are doing live feeds every Wednesday, but I will let everyone know we have to take a week off next week. We won't have a live show next week. So a week off from the Big Mountain. We got all of the big news out this week with the ACC and Gloria Nevarez anyway. Maybe, hopefully next week it'll be a little slower for us.
Let it roll. Loves your t-shirt, JY.
There we go. We were getting razzed that I haven't worn my Boise shirt in a while, and so I had to wear my Boise shirt yet again. But here we go. I got the blue shirt on the blue. What does it say? I don't even know what it says. Oh, welcome to the blue. Duh.
Yeah.
Welcome to the blue. Got my Boise shirt back on. So I can stop getting razzed in our freaking comments about what shirts I wear. I mean, lo and behold, I wear collared shirts when we have, like the commissioner on, but be that as it may. All right, so are we ready to get into it?
I think
I've done
so.
enough BS in here to start. Let's get into
I'm ready.
The ACC settlement. We can just start with, again, I think everybody knows what the heck is going on. We'll talk about that briefly. Would love to hear from some of our dwellers on that. And I think you want to look at some of the revenue eyeball information, since that's going to be tied to it. But, we had the conversation with Doug. And I've been, it's one of those things where you get all this new data and my brain just it's like a little hamster on a wheel up there. It just never stops. So as over the last 2 days, any new nuggets that maybe came to the forefront that you didn't think about before?
No, not really. I think, as more details have come out, we had a great conversation with Doug Rohan.
Yep.
You got to check out that episode if you haven't already. Doug, he's totally plugged into the FSU situation, but being a practicing attorney in the state of Georgia,
Yep.
He has the legal background that he can mix together. So it was great, talking with him. And, the ACC, that settlement, that's been that's the college football media has been just so involved with that, even though some other things are going on. So as the details have come out, I've had more kind of just questions kind of pop up.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I want to talk about, though, was the this new revenue sharing or this new unequal revenue distribution model as part of this. And so basically it sounds like the top five or so in viewership numbers will be getting extra money, while the bottom group, the bottom 5 or 6, basically pay or lose money,
right?
Lose part of their stipend to go and pay for those top group. So basically, when I looked at it, and we have a chart up here. I think we're going to throw up with those viewership share numbers. Now, one, you got to take SMU out of it.
Right.
They only had 1 year in the conference. There was something kind of funny where their games weren't shown on the big network this year and all that, even though they end up going through and winning the conference.
Yeah.
So take them out of it. But if you disregard them, you basically see a situation here where the bottom 5 or 6 teams are basically going to be paying the top 5 or 6 teams in revenue to stay around another potentially 3, 4, 5 more years. So that means while Florida State and Clemson, Miami, even Georgia Tech, Louisville, maybe UNC, while they're getting extra money based on their numbers, their revenue numbers to stay around, programs like Boston College, Wake Forest, UVA, maybe even Duke, Syracuse, the programs who they don't have good football viewership. There is a separate portion of basketball revenue. But as far as in football, programs like that, they're basically paying to buy some more time to keep the ACC alive, which I think is very interesting. But then that just leads me into my first big question, okay? Because we see the framework. We know when they can get out. We know how much it's going to cost. We know that they're, again, the bottom group of teams is basically giving up a portion of their revenue to keep that top group of teams for another 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
But then what is that, what happens next? So my first question that leads me to is, how soon are we going to start to see an exodus? Okay. I listened to, we had Doug on and he seemed to think, I'll say for me, when I saw this, I immediately said, okay, Florida State, the top group, they'll hang around to 2030. They'll collect their extra $15 million a year, which could, add up to $60, $75 million. And then they'll leave after 2030 when they can potentially pay $75 million, which those numbers get real close to each other. And, at that point, that lines up with the Big Ten having a new media deal coming up at that point. Big 12 has a new media deal. SEC will be close to renewing their deal. The CFP media deal will be renewing real close to that time. So the math and the timeline just makes sense for me. But talking to Doug and then seeing the response from Florida State fans, it sounds like they're thinking, earlier, 26, 27, 28 time frame. I think Doug put the brakes on a little bit, but even Doug, who's conservative for a Florida State fan, is saying he expects Florida State to be playing in either the Big Ten or the SEC by 2028.
Yeah.
So
that's say 28 was definitely he definitely was not super gung ho on 26.
Right, but 27.
But by
28.
28 for sure. I
Yeah.
think if we gave Doug a chart, I think he'd have it at a very high likelihood 28. They'd be out of the ACC.
And that, I'll be honest, it took me by surprise because based on what I know of the Big Ten and how they would rather wait until their media deal is up and how they did things with USC and UCLA, where they announced it 2 years ahead of time, but they didn't start playing until the new media deal was moving forward. That kind of took me by surprise. So it begs the question, where, how soon do you think we're going to start to see teams leave? And I think even you and I disagree.
We do.
You think, so tell me what your thoughts are on that.
I'm more with Doug, especially for FSU and for UNC. I am now really I've really taken a hold of this Carolina Blue matter this school wants out of here. And with what you kind of provided our dwellers in January, I just think there's so much smoke that's been kept under the hood for UNC, and it's now billowing out. And this gives them the out. Thank you, Clemson and Florida State, for paying all those legal bills. And I'm with Doug. I'm actually, we texted before. We've been texting a lot over the past 2.5, 3 days. And I was surprised you weren't as bullish on a change. And just like you said, you're like, oh, I think it's 2030 because I'm in that 28. I was what Doug said. That was right where I was at for FSU. I'm thinking 28. They're probably out of there. And that's where I'm at. I'm with UNC. I think is highly likely out of there by then as well. So I'm more bullish on changes happening before 2030. And I'm going to go with Doug and say, I'm going to lead in 27, 28, 26. I think is still just too soon. You might get announcements happening here in the next 12 to 18 months. And of course, August is a big deal. August is a big deal month for the ACC for notifying. I even know there's smoke about this summer things happening. And I'm not breaking news. I'm not saying that will or won't happen, but I definitely think it will be well before a 2030 for both UNC and FSU. And because we both agree that NC State is likely going to be tied with UNC, they might be out as well. The only hiccup to UNC, and we say it all the time, and I always have to put that asterisk there, is the political piece to it. And we've talked about it. I'm not going to get into the details, but the political piece could slow things down with a UNC, NC State type of movement. But man, I think FSU is, they can't. And that's why I asked Doug, I kind of broke in. You asked a 2-point question. I wanted to ask him about the fee. That's why I wanted to do that because, are they ready? And he didn't say, yes, they are, today. But he's like, they're going to pay it whenever things are ready to be paid. And you've always been clear that the Big Ten wants nothing to do with this until the litigation piece is completed. Well, guess what? Effective yesterday, the litigation piece is completed. So it opens the door dramatically to the Big Ten, in my opinion. From what you've said, again, I agree with Doug a lot here.
Well, I think the biggest wild card in this whole thing is ESPN. We did an episode, it might have been close to a month ago now, where it was titled, I think it was something like, ESPN is driving the next phase of realignment.
Right.
And there were some people that were like, oh, that's sensationalism. They're making them the big boogeymen. Well, here's the deal, JY.
Give it to me.
It was not a coincidence. ESPN extends this ACC deal. Like Doug said, there's no way they were going to extend that deal unless they had some assurances they knew which way things were going.
Yep.
To me, I think ESPN, because they own the rights to both, the ACC and the SEC, I think they are the puppet master in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just depends on how quickly do they want to make this happen. And now we've seen them pull back with some financial stuff. They're pulling out of the MLB contract early.
Viewership going down.
Put
that out there.
Yes. They are, it sounds like they're no longer players for F1, which was a big thing this last year.
Right.
This last few years, that contract they had. They're canceling some of their programming. The Around the Horn, a really popular program, is going away, and they're just kind of shifting. And that's been a trend with ESPN. cost savings. Now, is it because...
Can I interrupt you real
Yes.
quick? We should do an around the horn where people give you points and people give me
Oh,
points.
that would be fun.
I don't know how we can do that. Hey, PW Production.
Yeah, let's get our producer on that.
Yeah, anyway.
Live polling where they can give us points.
Give us points on whether they agree with us or disagree
I love
with
it.
us.
I love it.
Anyway,
Great
sorry,
idea.
I totally took it off your...
Well, so I think that's the wild card. Because honestly, the vibes I'm getting from my Big Ten contacts is the Big Ten, they would rather slow play this thing. Honestly, I think they would have rather the litigation took a little longer.
Yeah.
And I think ESPN was the catalyst or was the driver of getting this settlement.
Yep.
And so it's going to depend on how quickly they want to move.
Yeah.
I did get word that ESPN is very motivated to have UNC. They want to capitalize on Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And all the ratings and have UNC playing SEC teams.
Yeah.
And not playing Wake Forest and Boston College. It really, I think the ball is in their court.
Yeah.
If it was up to the Big Ten, I think the Big Ten would really slow play it. And for me, I think Florida State is I think they're headed for the Big Ten. Now, if the SEC wants to keep them, or if ESPN wants to keep them and wants them to move over to the SEC, I think that's what will happen. And I think Doug is more in line with, he would be happy with either, but I think he's made it clear that for himself as he lives in the state of Georgia, and probably the rest of the Florida State fan base, that local fan base there, would rather be in the SEC.
Yeah.
And so if they do go to the SEC, that could be a quicker path.
Yeah.
But if it's just up to the Big Ten, if the Big Ten is the only bidder, I think we may see where an announcement is made in 2028,
right.
And then you see them playing their first season in the Big Ten in 2030.
Okay.
I think that's a possibility. But it really depends on, does ESPN make a move first? Because if they make a move and peel off UNC, North Carolina State, Clemson, and another school, then we might see those dominoes just like we saw with the Pac.
Yeah.
Where the Big Ten was not ready to move on Washington or Oregon at that point.
Right.
But when that happened, they had to jump on that opportunity.
Well, in the last update we did, well, not update, but it was in the settlement talk, we talked about how they want each other, the SEC and the Big Ten, wants the other person to make the first move.
Yeah.
And absolutely, once that first move happens, there will be a counter move.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they're partners or not, and it's, Doug mentioned he thinks this is already all figured out. The chessboard's already laid out. And I think that's highly likely. They're not going to get into some bidding war between conferences. But real quick, can we throw that chart up real quick again before we do? I just want to mention the ESPN piece. I'm not going to say I 100% think, and that's why I brought it up to Doug. I 100% think that ESPN has been involved in this for a while. I don't think it was, in my opinion, it wasn't you have to do this or else. I think it was more of if you do this, then we'll do this. If you don't do this, well, then we're going to have to do this. And so I called it massaging.
Yeah.
Maybe some would call it manipulating how things worked. I don't want it to sound like I think ESPN was giving hard ultimatums, but I think they were saying, well, you have two options, and here they are. And if you pick this option, this is where we're going to be. And if you pick this option, this is where we're going to be. And I don't think either option was the demise of the ACC, right. But it was a dramatic difference between where we're going to be for the next couple years.
Right.
And I think the ACC absolutely knew that. And this is whatever it's going to be, 2 to 5 year kumbaya moment that we all get to stay together for a little bit longer. But at some point it's going to come to an end, and ESPN orchestrated that. So
was there something on the chart
I wanted to mention something on the chart. So the thing that sticks out to me here, Steve, I mean, look at 1 and 2 for crying out loud.
Yeah, way
dramatically higher than everybody else. Interesting. Who took out the daggone lawsuits about this? And who was the one, number one, that said they wanted this model that's now being agreed to in terms of revenue distribution and stuff years ago? Didn't get listened to, said, nah, quite frankly, the way they took it was, we're going to use you guys. That's how FSU took it, and that's just how they took it. And they took them to court about it. Now, they took them to court over a whole bunch of things. But I'll bet you if they approve this model, I'm not so sure we would be in a lawsuit right now.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you.
So, and not only have they gotten what they wanted with the exit fees and the media rights deals, but they got the model that they wanted, that they can at least for the next couple years, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5, be okay being in the ACC until the Big Ten or SEC is ready to make that move. So for them, I mean, again, they won big time here.
Yeah.
Usually with settlements, it's a 50-50. Well, maybe not 50-50, but you have a bit of a winner and a bit of a loser. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, Clemson, or FSU and Clemson got, they couldn't ask for much more. I mean, I think when if you told them this is how this was going to end in a settlement, back when they took out the lawsuit, they'd be like, okay, here's the money. Yeah. Here's all the money we're going to pay in legal fees. Just give us that answer right now. I guarantee you that's what they would have said.
Yeah, if they would have listened to Judge Cooper and done their mediation, the ACC actually may have ended up better.
Right, because they didn't spend all that damn money.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be clear. This was complete capitulation by the ACC. I mean, it was total surrender. We don't know the reasons behind it. Maybe, the guarantees from ESPN, whatever, right, or some pressure by ESPN, whatever it was. But complete capitulation. Florida State, Clemson got pretty much every single. This was like a 95-5,
right?
Not a 60-40, or something like that.
The other thing I want to point out is just, I mean, you're not surprised at who's at the bottom of this chart. I mean, you often hear Boston College and Wake Forest, and I'm not, dissing on those teams, but not surprising that Boston College and Wake Forest are at the bottom here. And then, kind of the mid, once you get to 3% up to, that 5, 6, they're all kind of in the middle. But there is a clear top 2, clear. And even number 3 there, Miami, kind of holding their own. They're doing fine. And there's a clear bottom. Again, scratch SMU, the data is not quite right. But there's a clear bottom couple. And, that's exactly what FSU has been saying.
They were right.
They were right. Exactly. And maybe that's probably why they freaking did so well in their settlement. So let's get to... Oh, go ahead. Yeah. So I'm going to read over some comments quick, but go ahead.
So I have a point I want to make there where you said maybe that's why they won.
Okay.
I think I was listening to On 3 podcast with Ari Wasserman.
Yeah.
They said basically one of the points they made was the whole problem with this is one side had so much more to lose than the other. It didn't even necessarily matter if one side had a better legal argument than the other, because if you think about it, if the ACC lost, what was the worst case scenario? The entire grant of rights could be blown up and they could cease to exist as a conference. What if FSU lost? What was the worst thing that could happen? Well, they got to stay around until 2036. Right. The conference they were already playing in, they're going to continue to play football.
Right.
So it wasn't even if you don't agree that one side had a stronger legal case than the other, the problem is one side had so much more to lose, and they were ultimately the side that blinked first because they were risking so much more.
Right.
Okay, so... Do you have some comments you want to go
real
over
quick, just some shout out. Do you want to get to the Big Ten SEC thing next? Is that where we're going?
Well, I have a couple more things on settlement.
So real quick, I'll get to some, just so we can kind of keep up with this. Clint is in the house. He's another Mountain West Cowpoke fan. He appreciated our Gloria discussion. Thank you. We're going to get to that towards the end. So if you guys have questions about the discussion with Commissioner Nevarez or anything Mountain West related, we're probably not going to get to them here in the first section. Hold off. Hopefully you can stick around here for another 15, 20 minutes or so. We'll get to them towards the end. So hold your Nevarez/Mountain West comments. But thank you, Clint. It was a great time. I mentioned to Steve, I think I said the word here. If anybody wants a good drinking game, play that episode and take a shot every time you hear JY say here, H-E-R-E, because I said it like 50 times. You'll be drunk off your freaking... Anyway, don't do that. So we've got, Hard Rock. I like this question, and JEH, in my opinion, answers it correctly. Questioning about how many wins, viewership numbers are better than wins, and JEH, I think, answers it correctly. Viewership/brand pays the bills, and that's what we're talking about here. You saw the chart. And wins matter. Wins builds viewership and brand for sure. They're not disconnected necessarily, but the media partners want eyeballs. And, frankly, they don't care who wins the game. They just want people watching the game. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, again, JEH, I think, answered it at a broad level correctly. Viewership and brand pays the bills with in regard to the media partners, and that's where we're at. He and Hard Rock says he understands that. He doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what to say to that. I hear you, Hard Rockin'. Let's see what else we got here. We got a couple new people in the house. Just a Man 400. Memphis Tiger fan. Wonder what happens next. Well, good question, Just a Man. We have an episode coming out tomorrow about the ACC, and we talk about who we think is likely going to be leaving the ACC. We give a top 10 list. Steve give his list. I give my list. Top 10 list of who we think is going to be leaving the ACC here in the next 5 years. And then next week, we do an episode, to your point, about backfilling the ACC and who's at the top of the list. And Steve did a tiered ranking, 4 different tiers. I'll let you know, not a surprise. Memphis is, of course, on that list, but you can wait and see where they end up on our list of targets for the ACC to, kind of refill the pot when potentially some people leave here. Sargent is back in the house. Love it. Greetings to you as well.
Minnesota Knowles wants FSU in the Big Ten, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure it says MN. I'm guessing that means Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, the people down south, they probably feel more connected to the SEC. Whereas if you get some Florida State people that are up the East Coast or in the North, they would like to see them in the Big Ten.
Yep. Tyler's asking about how does this settlement affect the schools that want into the ACC. Again, we'll talk about that early next week. I'll drop that episode on Monday or Tuesday. I don't want to give too much of it away because we kind of want you to watch that episode. So,
David Jorgensen.
Okay, sorry, my this thing jumps on me, Steve.
No, it's okay.
Here, this is where we're at. We're caught up for the most part.
Okay. So
yeah, go ahead.
I want to address. So Joseph Kurliging says, I think this settlement sends a signal to Notre Dame. He says, I'm a fan. He's a Notre Dame fan to get ready to join the Big Ten. So here's the thing. If Notre Dame were to want to join the conference, I think the Big Ten would be a perfect fit. I know there's a lot of my fellow Big Ten fans that just don't like Notre Dame for whatever reason. I get it. Believe me, I get it. But yes, they would be a great fit for the Big Ten. However, I don't see anything that has happened, nothing that has happened over the last 3-4 years that has suggested there's any pressure on Notre Dame to join a conference whatsoever. They are their own entity. They're given freedoms within the CFP system that no other school has, basically. They have an open invite into the CFP every year if they finish in the top 14 of the country. I mean, they don't need to join a conference. They're making more money not joining a conference.
Right.
They have a media partner willing to pay them. I don't see any signals that are going to Notre Dame to join a conference. They can do what they want. They could create a schedule where, they played 3 games against the ACC, 3 games against the Big Ten, 3 games against the SEC, and play the service academies, and everybody would sign on for it because they'd be like, great.
Yeah.
There's nothing pushing them to that.
So I see we got Conundrum. He's reminding everyone to hit that like button. Thank you, sir. It's great to have all this chatter in here. I saw David Jurgensen and Al Walker both saying about getting the Big Ten into Florida. You've been saying how important that is. I think most Big Ten fans agree that that's got to be the next spot that the Big Ten gets. Ricardo, our good old UTEP fan, is with us. Good to have you back, sir. All right, Steve, we're caught up. Why don't you... Almighty Finn is in the house. Good to have you. Darren Thornton, good to have you. Stitcher. I don't know how you say that. Stitcher. I don't know. Go ahead, Steve.
So the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the settlement, specifically to the settlement, as far as just the open question is who's going where? We did an episode on the top 10 teams that we think are likely to leave. But I'm really interested in, who goes to what conferences. Is there going to be a battle? Doug seems to think basically this is all settled already, or he's kind of guessing that, making an educated guess that, and honestly, my contacts in the Big Ten have told me now for about 6 to 9 months that they are expecting basically that the SEC is going to get the pick of who they want because of their dealing with their deal with ESPN, and that both conferences are aligned with ESPN. ESPN is paying the bills. That basically SEC is going to take who they want, and then the Big Ten is going to get what's kind of their pick of what's left over.
Yeah.
And also, but what he said was, because then I'm like, oh well, they just get the scraps, and he said not really, because it looks like the two conferences want different things right now.
Yeah.
The Big Ten really wants to get into the state of Florida, and then they just want another school that would make big matchups.
Yeah.
Whereas, the SEC already has really great matchups in football. They don't necessarily need to add another powerhouse. I mean, it would be great to add more matchups, but that they're looking for other things, maybe some brands that they don't have or moving into some markets, whatever, that there might not be a fight. So that's my big question that I have going forward is, is it already settled? Have they already hashed out who they're going to take?
Yeah.
They've already split the pot, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or will there be a fight? If we get farther and farther, 29 to 30, and the Big Ten now is bidding on teams, and we're getting closer to the SEC's contract coming up, do we see a bidding war? Do we see a fight? Or is all this going to be hashed out already, maybe behind the scenes?
I don't think it helps them to fight. I mean, they have been kind of living the kumbaya, let's smoke a, little ganja together and live the big life because they're the big boys. I don't think it gets them anything to fight. If they can, just like this last go around, you got UCLA and USC going to the big. You got Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC.
Worked out great for both.
They love it. They're living high on the hog.
Yep.
Why fight each other? Again, if and maybe FSU is that fight. I don't know. That could be the issue. But if FSU is going to go to the big and UNC is going to go to the SEC. Why fight about it? Like it just doesn't win any marks for them. They're getting the governance they want. They're going to get, from what it looks like, the governance. They're going to get the tournament stuff. They're going to have control of the CFP. They're going to have what they need. And this is why I'm so against a breakaway. They don't need to break away. They have everything that they want. This settlement is going to give them more of what they want. They're going to get more power. And more viewership and more money, and they don't need to break away. There's no point in doing that. It's going to take a little more time, but I think it was Sankey that said it a little bit ago. If you trust him or not, that's a different. I get it if you don't, but I think he was the one that was like, why would we want to break away and start a new entity that has to redo all of this stuff when there is an entity? Yeah, it's broken entity, but it's an entity. We can maneuver within it, and that's exactly what they're doing. So I don't see a reason for them to fight about this. I hear what you're saying, Steve.
Yeah.
But I don't think it, for the benefit of the power two, I don't think it benefits them at all. And I would also say, I think when you look at the schools that we're talking about, and I look at the chart here real quick, UVA's brought up a lot with the SEC, and I get this is football, but their viewership sucks.
Yes.
And I hear it all the time. SEC wants at UNC, and they want UVA, and I look, and this is, it's one piece of data, and there's a lot more to it. I've never quite understood the UVA piece to the SEC. I just have never quite got that. And you look at this data, Virginia Tech is 10th and UVA is 14th. Why do you want that? When you can get UNC and NC State at 7 and 8 and maybe Clemson at 2. If I'm the SEC, give me Clemson, UNC, and NC State, and I am freaking. And if you have to add a fourth, fine, give me a fourth. But it's not Virginia and Virginia Tech, I can tell you that much. Not from an outsider standpoint. Do you have any thoughts on Virginia? I just don't understand the Virginia law.
I think there's been a school of thought that the SEC, they basically have the southeastern part of the country, the footprint.
Yeah.
But where they're missing is state of North Carolina and the state of Virginia. Now, North Carolina seems a lot more obvious because there's valuable brands there.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it's going to come down to is, do they want to move into the state of Virginia? Mm-hmm. If they do, then Virginia and Virginia Tech are that's their options.
Right.
But if that's not a priority to them, then I agree with you. It's probably not going to happen. And honestly, University of Virginia, if you visit that college campus, if you talk to they're a much better fit, even though they're technically in the South. They're a much better fit for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the Big Ten is interested in that because They already kind of have that DC, Northern Virginia market. They're looking for someone to add ratings. Well, you can see on this chart that we had put up,
right?
That ain't UVA.
No, that's my point. I'm with you. It's not a new. That's not a new data point. That's been like that for forever.
Yeah, I think you have to discuss them as possible targets, but I think they're very low on the list. I had those two schools as 7th and 8th on my list that we did. People should watch that episode on the most likely to leave.
Right.
But I'm with you on that. Yeah. I did want to talk about one other thing as a potential fallout of this settlement.
Go ahead.
So, there was, the PAC in the past had done some unequal revenue distribution. Mountain West has done that with Boise and San Diego State and some other schools. There's been a lot of speculation in the media, like, oh, now that the ACC did this, now it's inevitable that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to follow. Here's where I think that logic makes no sense whatsoever for a couple reasons. One, the ACC had to be brought along kicking and screaming with an existential threat in court to agree to this, because they weren't going to agree to it when there was such a disparity when you look at these numbers. And they only agreed to this because they're in such a bad position and they're trying to extend their life longer. The Big Ten and the SEC, they don't have those problems. Everybody's happy being in the Big Ten and the SEC.
Exactly.
There's not any kind of discord. There isn't any, fighting or whatever. And maybe that happens at some point, but there's no sign of that. And I can't speak as much on the SEC as I can on the Big Ten. But for the Big Ten, they look at each other as equals.
Right.
All of the schools, because they value it's the how well it's a combination of being success on the field and success classroom as a research university and all that. And I don't think the Big Ten presidents and they're the decision makers. They take a lot of pride in having schools like Northwestern, and even, a Rutgers or a Maryland that joined, who have not had much success on the field, but they're great academic institutions. So and Purdue is one that always gets talked about because they're not so good on the football field generally. Yeah. But again, another fantastic academic institution. And the SEC, they honestly just believe anybody in the SEC, you're in that footprint, you get the talent, you can win any year, which we've seen, happen for the most part. So I don't think that happens, at least not anytime soon in those two conferences. It's too much of a leap. There's too many people saying that it's inevitable, and I definitely don't think it's inevitable. It's possible, but I don't think it's anywhere near inevitable.
And I would say, I listened to what Gloria Nevarez says about fit and about the Mountain West, and they want schools that fit. Well, that's what the Big Ten has done.
Yeah.
Like, if you want a model of how to build a power conference, you use the Big Ten.
Right.
Because, to your point, they're not about we need an unequal revenue share because I'm bigger than you are. No, they're, for now, and it can all change. Money does crazy things.
Yes.
But they're about the conference and the betterment of everyone. And I get it. It's way easier to say that, to walk that walk when you're the big boy on campus. Yes. Way easier to say that. But they haven't always been the big boy on campus. Yes, the Big Ten has always been a very good conference. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that we're talking about them being a Power 2 conference today, quite frankly, that wasn't always the case.
Right.
And it's the fit, and it's because you care about the entirety of the university. And I see people make comments, when we bring up athletics. Nobody cares, or not athletics, academics. I don't care about academics. Yeah, they do. That's why these people are here. And yes, trust me, the presidents care and the trustees care about academics. We love to talk about football, and I'll talk about football till I'm blue in the face. But the Big Ten, if you want to talk fit, why do you think they care about AAU? Why do you think they are some of the best universities in the freaking country? And I'm the freaking Mountain West guy giving props to your Big Ten. But that's why. And I'm parlaying that into the Mountain West comments from Nevarez.
Same thing with them.
On a different level. Yeah. But they want the fit so that when this type of stuff happens, you still have a core 7 that has a conference. And that's why the Mountain West cares about fit. Do I think UTEP is going to be the next Boise? No, I don't. I love UTEP. I think they're a great ad, but I think they're a great fit into what the Mountain West is going to be doing here. And so, yes, they lost some really good brands, the Mountain West, but at the same time, from a conference standpoint, you've brought in partners that are maybe more like-minded
Yeah.
today. And again, money can change all of that. And I didn't mean to go on a tangent there, but I kind of did.
No, and I agree with you. And the naysayer, someone will come back and I'll play devil's advocate, and they'll say, "Yeah, but money makes the world go round. Eventually, it'll be about money." Well, here's the thing: you mentioned the academic side. Now, when we talk about academics, it's not just academic performance in the classroom.
Yeah.
It's research and research dollars. I don't think a lot of people have an understanding of how much money there is in research and how that is the lifeblood of these universities. The Big Ten, the reason they want people to be AAU members that join is because everybody who joins the Big Ten joins the Big Ten Research Consortium. Which is, I mean, pulling together, I mean, we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars of research money. And the presidents value that. I don't want to get into a deep debate about how that money is used and if it's actually shared or whatever. But to the Big Ten presidents, they place massive value in the amount of research dollars that you bring to the Big Ten Research Consortium. And so, and some of those schools who are maybe not producing on the football field, as long as they, they're performing in those research dollars, they're still going to be a good fit in the Big Ten.
Let's get to some comments quick here. Conundrum actually commented exactly what you just were saying about unequal revenue sharing. He says, "It is the demise of every conference. Don't do it. The ACC is in a death spiral. He maybe went a step further than you did, but to the point of, you were saying, is it needed right now? He's saying it's the demise of a conference, so I took it a step further. But is it even needed for the power? And I agree with you. There's no need. Where are they going to go? I mean, we've talked about this. Where's Ohio State going to go? I guess to the SEC, but they're at the top of the game. I mean, I don't know where the heck they're going. They're starting their own league, but
they're getting paid more
absolutely
in the Big Ten than they would be if they went to
right. So. Justin Mann, been watching us for a while. He loves West Coast football. Well, you've come to the right place because I love West Coast football as well. Almighty Finn loves the show. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Can you scroll up just what was the JH said about the Beaver board? They're talking about relegation. I don't want to get into that comment. Yeah. Never mind.
Oh, David Jurgensen with a super chat. What happens if the SEC takes FSU, UNC, NC State, and Clemson? I could see them do this to help them get to 9 or more conference games.
I think that's a very reasonable scenario.
Yeah.
And in that case, I think the Big Ten would be happy to invite Miami, gets them into the state of Florida. It's an AAU school, a big historic brand. And then they would look for a second one. And that's where, we have conversations of Georgia Tech and these other schools. If that second school for the Big Ten, they first of all, they want to get into the state of Florida, and that second school, they can be more, they can look at different criteria when they're picking a travel partner.
Thank you for that super chat. David Jurgensen coming in strong again, like he always does. Appreciate you, DJ. I'm going to try to catch, I think we're pretty well caught up. Al Walker has a question. How big is too big for a conference? Steve, how big is too big?
Well, I would say for now,
I'm talking about a conference.
The absolute maximum that I could see, and I think it would be too big, but the maximum that I could see the Big Ten going would be 24.
Yeah.
I think what's most likely going to happen is they both go to 20. The Big Ten adds 2, gets to 20. The SEC adds 4, gets to 20.
Yeah.
And they want to do a scheduling agreement, equal number of games, equal number of teams. It just makes everything work. So to me, that's the magic number is 20. But honestly, there's still the possibility. There's still a possibility that the SEC doesn't add anybody. I mean, They don't need any, unless ESPN forces their hand, they don't need anybody. They're already the best football conference. They're on the way to being the best basketball conference. Maybe they already are. I can't see the maximum that I could see the SEC going would be 20. Maximum I could see the Big Ten going would be 24. Okay. But I don't think they'll get there. I think they're both settle in on 20.
Mr. Ed in the house. He's a good follower of mine on X. Has some good comments. Appreciate you. Are we going to hear FSU fans complain if FSU doesn't get an immediate invite to the P2? I don't see anything happening until 28 at the earliest, with FSU getting into the big in 2030. That's exactly what Steve said when we started this conversation. That is Steve's timeline, Mr. Ed. I'm a little more bullish on that than that timeline, but that's your timeline.
I want to. Tyler Nelson says, JY and Steve, why didn't the Big Ten add Stanford and California? I got this one nailed.
I was going to say watch tomorrow's episode, but go.
Well, the reason they didn't, because I will tell you, Kevin Warren was interested in adding Stanford and Cal. There was definitely interest from the Big Ten. When they went to the media partners were interested in that Bay Area market, but they were not interested. It didn't hold the value of the Los Angeles market. They weren't ready to commit that. Basically, there was not enough value there. There was interest. I think there was interest from both sides. The media partners were somewhat interested, but there was just not enough value to add those two schools. And that's what it unfortunately comes down to, because the two of them would be a good fit in the Big Ten for those other reasons. But you need in order to add, because none of the schools are going to take less money, in the Big Ten. They're just not going to.
Sure.
So in order to add schools, you got to add enough value that everybody makes as much money at least as much money as they're now making. And there just was not enough value to add those two schools.
So Tyler asks about North Dakota State going to FBS. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to start digging on North Dakota State. I'm going to start sending emails. We have a lot. I think every week we have at least one Bison fan in our chat, and they want information.
Yeah.
And I am going to, we've done stuff on Sac State. We've done stuff on Tarleton State. I am going to start digging on North Dakota State. I am going to see if we can get some interviews with North Dakota State peeps. I don't know who. Maybe the AD if we're lucky enough to get him. But Tyler, I don't have an answer for you. I do think football only. I think the Mountain West could have interest. But if you listen to our conversation with Gloria Nevarez, I think any FCS program, football program, we're going to have to wait until we get this new House settlement, some governance things kind of, over the summer and stuff kind of figured out. But I do think the Mountain West may have one eyeball on North Dakota State as a potential. I'm not saying it's happening, but as a potential football only member. But I am going to try and do some digging for some of our Bison fans.
I want to make one comment on that as not the Mountain West guy.
Okey-dokey.
But, adding North Dakota State, and I've said this before, right away makes the conference better from a football entertainment perspective.
Right.
They're a great fit as far as that is concerned, and the success they've had on the field, I think right away they'd be competitive in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's no question there. The question is their administration ready to make that step? Are they willing to make those commitments? To me, that's the only question. That's the biggest question, I guess.
Yeah.
And I did want to, I think it was JEH that mentioned Nebraska lost its AAU status, okay?
Oh, yeah.
This will be the last time tonight I talk about AAU, I promise. But they did lose their status on a technicality. They're still part of the Big Ten Consortium.
Yeah.
They still meet what the criteria were when they joined, but the problem is that there was a technical ruling with their medical school campus being too far from their main campus, so they didn't technically meet the requirements of AAU. But the amount of research dollars didn't change; they didn't suddenly go down.
Right.
It's just how the AAU calculated it. So they're still a member of the Big Ten Research Consortium. They're still a very valued member of the Big Ten. It was just a technical ruling.
All right, well, let's get into Gloria Nevarez. Are you ready to switch gears here? We'll get to the second item. And I see if you have any questions for us about the Mountain West or the interview, now would be the time to stick them in that chat. We'll see what we can do for you to have a discussion or answer any questions that you have. There was one item I thought I wanted to mention before I get into that. I guess not. See, we got some new peeps. Tanner's back on. Good to have you here, Tanner. We've got Raj in the house. We got Alan in the house. What is that? Great. Drinkino. Good to have you, sir. Gloria rules, says Hard Rock Trivia. Yes. So let's get into just a little bit of discussion, and it just depends on what other questions we have. I don't really have any planned comments other than I want to give my biggest takeaways. Of course, I already knocked myself for saying here about 1,000 times in that damn interview. And I probably talk too much because that's what I do sometimes. But I think the biggest takeaways, and I'd love to hear the takeaways people had on the interview. I thought she had some really interesting things to say with the CFP, and you had a follow-up regarding kind of, having that one member in the CFP versus, a G6 playoff type of deal. And I think the answer she gave was very honest and transparent. Like, they're listening, but so far, she said at the very end, there really hasn't been one that has, been overly impressive, I guess. That's not how she said it, but overly impressive to her. And I think they're just, my opinion is they're so focused on making sure they're at the table for the CFP. Mm-hmm. They don't want to take anything away from that by having a G6 playoff. And it's not how she said it, but I kind of get the feel maybe it's, well, if we do that, is that the first step and then losing our access to the CFP? What did you feel about that?
I thought she was very clear right away, out of the gate, as soon as she started answering the question of how important that access to the 12-team playoff is to the overall larger CFP.
Yeah.
That was the main priority. And she gave a great answer. Definitely people should watch the episode because I think she was very clear in that, and that aligns with something I've been saying for a while. I think if you want to keep college football the way it's been, kind of a big tent thing, you've got to keep G5 access to the CFP. If they can come up with a way to do some other kind of playoff, like she said, that makes sense, cool. But I think, again, if you want to keep... There are some people that are just like, well, let's just go do our own thing. Right. We don't want to worry about the SEC and the Big Ten.
Right.
But if you want to keep college football big tent and keep it the way it has been our whole lifetime, you've got to keep G5 access to the CFP. It's incredibly important, and I think she made a really good statement about that really... Clearly, to me, it clearly defined her position, which I'm going to guess is the position of other G5 commissioners.
I would think it's probably the majority of, other G5, G6 commissioners. I agree with you. The other piece, we got into FCS, so of course, got to give a shout out. I know we've got at least a North Dakota State fan on. We have done a lot, again, with Sac State, Tarleton State. And of course, you knew us. You knew we were going to go there. We were going to talk Texas. We were going to talk... You got Tarleton State's name in there and Sac State's name in there. But, I wanted to focus more on FCS, especially with UC Davis coming on board and not bringing that football team in yet. And you know what? She said, Steve, what you have said, and Bill, that college football guy, if he's still listening, sitting in Cincinnati, in snowy Cincinnati, you both have said what she answered since day one. And I have thrown some cold water on that. But man, and is it a talking point? Is it truly the reasoning? There's certainly something to it because the way she answered the question and the depth that she went into with that, clearly the governance and the House settlement, until that settles, and this answers some of, was it Tyler's question from North Dakota State about this? There will be no FCS football teams getting an invite to not just the Mountain West, an FBS conference until some answers. And that's not a year from now, I don't think.
Could be later this spring.
I think it's in, later this spring, summer. We're talking 4 months or something. And are there invites that could happen later this year? Depending on the answers that they get, yes, I still think FCS invites to any conference could happen later in 2025. But right now, and I think that's part of the reason why we're on a pause as well. So what were your comments? I loved what she said about FCS. I don't think... It's rarely talked about. I don't know any other channel that's asking a FBS commissioner about how they view FCS, but I thought she did a great job answering it. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, she talked about the governance structure, like you said, and right now is just not a good time. This settlement is so delicate.
Yes.
They need to put the finishing touches on it. there's no time right now. It's not the right time to introduce new players into that, and we don't know what the governance structure is going to look like. Are there new levels that are going to be created? Right. So I think she was pretty clear. It's just not the right time right now until they get more certainty. I thought she did good with that, and I love the way she continued her theme about the fit, which I know you kind of went on a tangent about this earlier, but it was a recurring theme with her. Yeah. The fit into the Mountain West. Yeah. It wasn't. I don't think for her, it's not a matter of, FCS or FBS or this state or that state as much as what is the fit? What is the culture? Do they fit with what we're trying to do? Are they going to be here maybe for the long haul? Can we build long haul partners? So I think, I liked her answers on that. That part did not surprise me. I've heard from multiple people, which that because I've been saying it.
You have.
There's just nobody wants to bring FCS in until, they get certainty on this settlement. But it did kind of surprise me because you and I have been pushing, Texas and this and that. It really surprised me how much she kept going back to fit, not as much demographics and markets and all that. Those are those labels we like to put.
Yes,
it's more of what the fit was.
Yes.
And UTEP, great fit.
Yep.
Even Northern Illinois, which some people might question that. Northern Illinois has a history of playing teams in that part of the country. Right. It was a great fit. So for me, instead of focusing on groups and labels and demographics, she's really focusing on her conference.
Yes.
And who makes sense as a fit. I hate to keep saying the same word, but it's
she says it a lot.
Yes.
She uses that word a lot.
Exactly.
And people would be, that's a canned answer. But it's the truth answer. Now, there's a lot to fit, and she's not going to come on a pod and tell you what exactly they mean and the priorities of their fit, because that's, giving away the recipe to some degree. But, she's big on that. I got to give a shout-out. Dan, from the good old, merry old England, Great Britain. He's back with us.
Awesome.
He's a little late. It's 2:25 a.m. Dan, you know what? Cheers, brother. Thank you for joining us again. You came up last week. We were talking the relegation model for some reason last week. I love the fact that we are global. We're not national. We are global. We're a global pod, Steve. Dan, great to have you. Go ahead.
That reminds me of something. So there is a book. I don't want to talk about relegation. However, there is a book. Commissioner Sankey recommended it a couple years ago. A lot of the press have been sending it out. It's a book, and I forget the title. I wasn't going to bring it up tonight, but it's basically about how the English Premier League was created. And Commissioner Sankey said, if you're interested in college football and what's going to happen, everybody should read this book. So I'm going to guess Dan probably is familiar with this book about the English Premier League, how they got to where they are now, and maybe we can draw some conclusions if we read that about where college football is going.
Al says, this is interesting, maybe I don't know if you've heard this. He heard, depending on how the house settlement goes here, each FCS school will need to pay close to $300 into a settlement fund. That's a lot of money for FCS schools. Have you heard anything about that for FCS?
I've heard nothing about that whatsoever. Basically, what I've heard is they want to insulate FCS from any of this settlement, and keep them totally separate. So I've not heard anything like that.
Yeah.
But another thing I've heard is with the how this is going to work with the opt-ins. There may not be an FBS or FCS anymore, like as early as this summer.
Yeah.
And we may get rid of some of these rules. We've heard multiple. I think maybe Commissioner Nevarez touched on it. I think the Northern Illinois AD touched on it. There's these weird rules where if your football is in FBS, all of your other things have to be in FBS or the same division or whatever, which doesn't make a lot of sense for schools. So we may see a complete change in governance where they don't have to do that anymore, which could change. That could be a game changer for a lot of these smaller schools.
We got a cheers from Dan. He says it's rainy in England. Apparently that's pretty.
It's always rainy in England.
Pretty freaking normal. That's what he said. KC Smurthwaite in the house. You got to follow him on X. He says, pour one out for the Mac.
Woo, woo. For the whack.
What did I say?
You said Mac.
Whack.
Whack.
I'm pouring one out.
All right.
Things are they're looking a little grim for the whack. I have faith. They're going to pull it out in the end. But
there was a time where the whack was where it was at for college football, man.
Well, Casey's a good follow, guys. Make sure if you're on X, you're following Casey. He's got the goods, and he's got goods for Western football or football realignment, anything Western, and that's where I'm at. So great follow on X, guys. Good to have you here, Casey. Thank you for joining us.
Can I say, I want to bring up Sacramento State real quick.
Why?
Well, because we're talking about this,
FCS?
not letting people move up, not inviting or whatever.
Well, and that was the other piece I wanted to bring up. She mentioned about how they aren't sure how many FBS schools. She kind of mentioned, and that's another thing you have been saying. So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that it leads me to believe that there is more of a possibility, where especially if there's a change in governance or whatever, where maybe Sac State would be allowed, even if they didn't have a conference invite, because now the rules are you have to be invited.
Yeah.
But if once we get past the House settlement and things change a little, maybe they would be allowed to come up and do an independent schedule, which I think they could easily create an independent schedule where they're located. They would not have a problem doing that. And maybe that's what their president was talking to the NCAA president about.
Oh, I don't think maybe. I don't know. I don't have a source on it, but I'm pretty darn sure he's talking about how can we play an FBS schedule. FBS or bust. I follow Dr. Wood, waiting for that to come. He says it's supposed to come here in March or April, and we're going to see what he's got. I know they've got a lot of things planned, and I absolutely think that I'm still saying it. Indy FBS. That is where they're at right now. Indy FBS, and they're trying to make that work. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about, two more things with the Nevarez interview, and we are watching some of the comments here, guys. Appreciate everything you got going on. Casey's going at it. Love it. So the grant of rights. So I kind of threw, we had given a list of items that we wanted to talk about, and this was in the works for a little while, just because of scheduling. She's got all kinds of stuff going on with the membership stuff, with the CFP meetings. Again, the fact that she gave us her time still somewhat blows my mind, I'll be honest with you. But we gave her a list of items, and of course, over the last week or two, there's been some new items that have come up, one being the grant of rights, one being this global resolution that just came out last week. So of course I had to ask her about these two things, and we asked her about the grant of rights, and I and she was right. She said, well, the way you're asking this, I can tell you read it. The members were involved.
Yes.
And I'm like, pretty clear the members are involved. And she answered it exactly the way I thought it was going to be answered, but she confirmed my thoughts, right? Like, and she said that, well, it sounds like you think this, and yep, that's exactly how it was. Because when you read it, it's just so inclusive of all the members, and the only way you get something like that passed is if all the members, like, this didn't come from her office and they're like, here, sign this.
Right.
You would never get approval of something like that.
So it wasn't like the ACC where they flew on the campus and gave people 5 minutes to sign it. Can't read it. Can't keep a copy. Just sign it.
That's not how it works.
Okay.
No. And that's why there's so much buy-in. And, I think clearly now, and I had already moved UNLV back to unlikely. At this point, I can take UNLV off my board. Like, she answered that question. I won't take them off because anything can happen. But she was very clear that this came from the members. Everybody's invested in this. And so, like, it just confirmed my assumptions. And hopefully it confirmed, what I had been saying to some of our dwellers. But I appreciated what she said on the grant of rights piece there, kind of just connecting some of the dots that I thought were able to be connected.
I have a point on UNLV.
Okay.
And we made this it was something we discussed. UNLV, well, they just announced that their athletic department was in the hole by, I think, $20 million for 2024.
And the president just resigned.
Oh, yeah, which is not
or
good.
Whatever. Resigned. I guess he resigned. Whatever he did, he left. He's leaving.
So it really makes no financial sense for them because they're getting extra money if they stay in the Mountain West. They would have to pay to get out of the Mountain West to go to the Pac. For me, I think the best path for them is stay in the Mountain West, try and dominate the thing, try and be the top team, try and fight for that G5 spot, and get your athletic program, get your books in order,
right?
And look for basically present yourself for an invite to the Big 12 eventually.
Yeah.
To me, it just makes sense, a Big 12 or bust for them. Or just, stay in the Mountain West and have a better financial situation, at least for now, for the short term, and have a good path to try and get that G5 college football playoff spot.
Brady Moon in the house. Good to have you here, sir. Another one of my great ex-followers. He asked, what's the minimum members for the WAC to exist? So because the WAC doesn't have football, of course, football membership in the NCAA, at least at the FBS level, is 8. Mm-hmm. I think non-football is 6.
I don't know.
It's something less than 8. It's 6 or 7. Maybe if Casey's here or somebody knows the answer to that. There is a minimum, but I believe it's less than 8. I want to say 6 or 7 is the number there to answer that question, Brady. But JY's about done with his drink, so I'll leave it with that little asterisk beside it.
Well, someone in here, Tyler Nelson says, for some reason, the WAC, it keeps on surviving. WAC is the Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees of college sports. Well, there is kind of a name for that. Zombies. There's zombie companies. There's whatever. The WAC, I don't even know if they have any of the teams that constituted the WAC 15 years ago.
Well, they're right now with Cal Baptist, Cal Baptist leaving, I think they're all either Texas or Utah.
Yeah.
That's where their members are.
So they're not, even though they have the same name, they're not the same conference that the WAC was in the 90s or in 2000, 2002 when I think Utah was Utah there?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, anyways, they're a new conference with the same name, and maybe they'll reinvent themselves again.
Right. Tanner says he's pretty sure it's 6. That's what's in my brain as well, Tanner, that it is 6. Numbers either 6 or 7, says Tyler. Yeah, it's something under 8. 6, for whatever reason, that's what's sticking in my brain. So the last thing I want to get to is the global resolution. And, she can only say so much. Part of me didn't even want to ask it because it's a lawsuit thing. That's not really what I wanted to talk about. The focus of that discussion with her was really on the Mountain West and moving things forward. But I had to talk about it because I think the way she's presenting this makes sense. And as she said, she was clear. We brought it up. We asked them, and they all said yes. We would be interested, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing that they want to get together at this point. And she also was very clear, as what we have been saying. It's the normal course of action in a lawsuit. I see some people like, oh, this is really bad for the Mountain West. Oh, the Mountain West wants to settle. They don't have a good case. No, and she was very clear. You have the lawsuit. You have mediation settlement. You have, it's just par for the course. And we were seeing that with the FSU ACC. It didn't mean anybody was weak. It just meant, hey, if we can come to an agreement now without going any further and expending both our, financial resources, our time, our effort on all of that, let's try to do that. And she said, hey, it may not go anywhere. I'm hopeful that it does go somewhere, that we can get off of this conversation and we can both go our own ways. But I will also say the PAC needs money. The PAC needs money to add other schools. Now, at this point in time, I think the PAC, and I was clear in dropping my recent PAC episode, again, locked in to Texas State and St. Mary's. They don't need the money for Texas State and St. Mary's. They have a conference. They're going to have a conference. They're going to have 8 football members. And if they end up with that 8 football and 10 basketball for 2026, they did a pretty darn good job, quite frankly, in a rebuild. I know there's going to be Beav and Kook fans that are like, oh, this is a disaster. Why are we getting Texas State? Guess what? You rebuilt the PAC in a very difficult environment to do such a thing. So, and maybe they get some money and they can lure another school. I think it's unlikely because we talked about the ACC stuff earlier, and it's just going to be the reality for a while. So, I appreciated her answers. I knew we wouldn't get a lot of detail out of it. It's an active lawsuit. You're not going to get anything from anybody. But that was the last big thing. The first half was just a lot of kind of me saying how great the conference was, I'll be honest. And then once we got into kind of the CFP, the FCS, that's where I think we got a little more beef out of the conversation.
You were fanboying for her a little bit.
Is anybody surprised? I mean, I'll be serious. Is anybody surprised I fanboyed?
No.
Okay, good, because I wasn't.
I want to make a point about the mediation and just the two conferences. There's a couple things that could happen would be really great for both conferences.
Yeah.
One would be to come to some kind of a settlement with mediation, because we just saw the ACC and their schools go to court, fight out, spend all this freaking money to go back and end up taking a deal that they could have had day one without spending all that money. So come to agreement, come to mediation. Neither side is going to get everything they want. Come to something you can both live with so you can move on. The second part of it is they both need to get their media deals signed, so they know what their revenue is and all that stuff. That would quell a lot of this. And the third thing I want to say is, and I'm a neutral observer. I'm a Big Ten guy.
Yeah.
And part of it, the Big Ten kind of started this by going in and screwing over the teams that got left over in the pack, and I totally get that. So I don't have any ill feelings towards any teams in either the pack or the Mountain West myself. I have sympathy for teams in both conferences. I would say stop the pissing match. I see this on Twitter. Pack people have to attack Mountain West people. Mountain West who are staying have to attack Pack people, and it's just constant negative. The thing is they could have joined together and created a conference. Well, they decided not to. Okay, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Each side is going on their own path.
Right.
They're not really competing over the same schools.
No.
They're looking in different directions, different areas. So what is the point of the constant bickering and the pissing match and all that stuff? I get it. They're in litigation right now, and it would help to settle that. But for the Pac fans, look at your own conference. Worry about your own conference. You guys have mostly rebuilt the conference. You're right there towards the end. And the same thing with the Mountain West fans. Oh, yes, you lost some of your top tier programs. It is what it is. That's how these things work, unfortunately. But Gloria Nevarez is doing a good job of rebuilding the Mountain West and finding schools that fit, and can be a lot of fun. Could still be a good, fun conference to watch late night football. And I think both sides, the fan bases, need to get over it and move forward. Stop sniping at each other, griping at each other. It's just not helpful. And the worst part is, I think there's a lot of fans out there, and we've seen it with our fan base, that they just like Western teams and Western football.
Right.
You got Cougs fans who are interested in what's going on with New Mexico and the Lobos, or New Mexico State, and vice versa. And it just creates this whole hostile environment. There's no point of it, because they're not competing against each other.
Right.
They're really not. So I hope at some point everybody can just move on. It would have been better to merge, but I think they can still create two good conferences that are going to be fun to watch.
Couple last comments, and then we're going to hit the ROAD. I see, where was it? Mr. Ed asked a question about okay, well, first of all, who asked the question? No, Al asked the question about UNLV, but I do want to do Mr. Ed's comment, because this did surprise me. I appreciate you bringing this one up. Got the sense that Gloria Nevarez, from Gloria Nevarez, that the Mountain West adding Texas schools is not a priority. Maybe doesn't help their media deal. JY, have you tried to connect with Sam Houston AD? So no, I haven't tried to connect with the Sam Houston AD. I was a little surprised, because we definitely banged the Texas drum, the state of Texas drum. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, I didn't get the feel like, and it gets back to the fit conversation, that it's more about who they are than necessarily where they are at this point. And I think they got fortunate that UTEP is in the state of Texas, and also very much interested in joining the Mountain West. That was a massive win there. Yep. And they get GCU for football only. Again, that was like two perfect worlds colliding, and it was a match made in heaven, in my opinion. I know there's some haters about that, but I think it was great. And I'm with you. I didn't get any sense that Texas mattered a whole lot to her. Now, that could have just been her having a good poker hand. Who knows? It could have been a great poker hand played by her, but I'm with you. That was the read that I got as well, that while we like to say there's so many things to like about Texas, Mr. Ed, I believe, is in Texas, and he likes Texas too. I didn't get any sort of warm and fuzzies that, yeah, we got to get into Texas. And again, that could be a complete poker hand on her part. We have no idea.
And yes, I totally agree, and I was somewhat surprised as well. But it goes along with what she talked about, and I'll say, and again, and I know I was telling people to stop like fighting between the Pac and the Mountain West, but there is a different approach between both, where the Pac, they set out to rebuild the Pac and to maybe hopefully become a power conference again. So they're trying to add value through like markets, big brands, or whatever. Even if it's geographically separate, or because they've looked at Memphis, they've looked at Tulane and all that. Whereas I think the Mountain West, it seems like from what Gloria said, that really they're looking more, again, do you fit that regional flavor, that fit? Trying to build value by having just a fun football conference. Which was what made you fall in love with the Mountain West. At the beginning was, I can watch at 9:00 at night. I can watch some awesome, fun football. And if they end up adding a North Dakota State, they would make for fun football. Yeah. So I think they're on two different paths, and I think the path that they're on is the right path for each conference.
Quick answer to the question by Al. He says, if UNLV drops the Mountain West and moves to the Pac, does that mean the Mountain West falls apart? No. At this point, with the ads that they have, they're not going to fall apart. I think it would be a blow to the Mountain West. They're building around UNLV in Las Vegas. Massive blow to the Mountain West, but they do not fall apart by using UNLV. Two other comments here. We've got W. Bundy saying he's a Kook fan and he's fine with Texas State, but he's iffy on St. Mary's. JEH says he's fine with St. Mary's, and at first he was iffy on Texas State, but he's warming on them. And, I've been posting stuff about it ever since we dropped that episode, and that's exactly what I hear from every Pac fan. I have not had one Pac fan that's been like, I love them both, that's great.
Yeah.
Or I hate both of them. Almost everybody says, I like one and I'm not so sure about the other. And it's 50-50. Like, some people think Texas State is great, but they're not so sure about St. Mary's. And usually the crap I get about St. Mary's, or the stuff people say, is their gym looks like a high school gym. Right. Okay, whatever. And then the opposite way is, I'm great about St. Mary's because they're one of the top WCC schools. They have a great, with Gonzaga, a really good partner with Gonzaga. Basketball rivalry. Yeah. But then Texas State, they're like, they just became FBS. So I see that. I appreciate those two comments because those are exactly what I see all over the place on X and in our comments. It's like, we're good on one and we're kind of iffy on the other. It's really interesting that I see that. And again, it's almost 50-50 from Pac fans.
And I'll be honest, I don't see the downside to either. Texas State specifically for football, gets you into that state, into the state of Texas. I think it'd be a great ad. They have growth potential, and basketball is a weird thing. Like, you can have these, we see that in the East Coast, these small little, St. John's is almost on top of the basketball world right now.
Right.
So you can have these small little schools that can be great basketball schools and get advanced in the tournament and make you money for your conference. So I don't see the drawback from either side. I think both of those, and I think both the Pac and the Mountain West have done a good job of, let's be strategic, adding football members, and there's money to be had in basketball. Let's add some basketball members. With Mountain West added the school in Arizona,
GCU.
GCU,
the
yes,
Havocs?
yes. Again, great growth opportunity in basketball. I think both conferences are doing a good job of being strategic. And I don't see a downside for the Pac in either of those.
Well, let's wrap this up. Rumblings here, couple comments. He just mentioned why the UNLV president stepped down. He mentioned it was for personal reasons. Thank you. That was a question from up above. Rumblings again says, where was it? Texas State would be awesome for baseball. I had a question, I think it was on X, about can you look at the sport, the Olympic sports, with the new Pac-12? In baseball, as all Oregon State fans know, is super important. And Texas State baseball team is kicking butt. They've had some major upsets. Both Texas State and St. Mary's has baseball teams. And trust me, that is very important to the Beavs and the Cougs and the rest of that Olympic programming. So I do want to take some time to look at where the pack is at now with the additions of Texas State and St. Mary's to see how well that kind of fills their Olympic sport, because that's something we rarely talk about. Football fans don't even hardly think about. This is a conference of all sports, not just a football conference or not just a football and basketball. They need to have a conference for everybody. Appreciate that rumblings. I'm going to try to take some time and do that. Yep.
Al, he said it baffles him why UNLV is the link to both Mountain West and the Pac. Here's the thing. It's Vegas. Vegas is the link to the entire sporting world and money. And I think the Mountain West is very smart to leverage. They can keep UNLV in the fold and leverage Las Vegas. We've talked about that. Having the Mountain West basketball tournament there, having media days brings it's a huge value. And really, I mean, that's the link of sports and money right now is Vegas.
Yeah. Couple other ones real quick. Where were they at here? W. Bundy says, love the Mountain West. Scheduling agreement is the reason I found this show. Obviously hate the Pac-12 collapse, but I can appreciate parts of the journey. Well, good on you, sir. The journey it's very interesting. You don't have to like it, but appreciate you following our channel. We try to keep it as unbiased and honest as we can, but I am a Mountain West homer, and that comes through every so often.
But at the same time, we appreciate our Pac fans. And,
absolutely.
We're gonna.
Oh, JEH has been with us for forever. I haven't chased him away yet. And not that I'm trying to. I'm just saying. He understands where I'm coming from, and I understand where he's coming from. And last thing, shout out Atomic Skull. He's back. We've had him for several weeks. And just because his name's cool, I got to give him a shout out to the Atomic Skull. Anything else see here, Steve? We're going to wrap this sucker up.
Let's see. Something about a CSU shirt. You have a Rams shirt you wear.
I have a Rams shirt.
Then? Yeah.
Have you asked Kevin McKinney forgiveness for wearing the CSU shirt? Nope.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Nope. Vegas market is ready to pop. It is blowing up, just a man. No doubt about it. Everybody knows it. You want to be in it. And that's why the Mountain West is doing what they're doing. The UNLV's got the good hand right now, and the Mountain West is like, and the not just the Mountain West, the members of the Mountain West know it, and they're letting them, they're riding with that good hand.
We're gonna do a Mountain West basketball preview here pretty soon.
Yes.
Mountain West tournament. UNLV just had a big win over San Diego State.
Yes.
Really helped their chances of maybe getting into the tournament.
Yes.
The big tournament, and kind of hurt San Diego State's chances. They've been pushed down to the bubble at this point from what I've seen.
I don't think UNLV has a chance of making the big tournament, but they definitely hurt San Diego State's chances.
Well, they're still listed as having.
I'm not so sure about UNLV. But hey, here's what we got. We got Ricky Thompson coming back on. We had him on about 2 months ago. And we had some commenters saying, hey, what about basketball? I thought we were going to do more basketball. But I'll tell you what, with all the lawsuit stuff and the Mountain West stuff and the ACC stuff, we have too much to do, and this isn't our day job.
Right.
But we're gonna do a preview of the Mountain West basketball tournament. We'll get that out in the beginning of the week because it's next week already, and we got to give some love to the Mountain West basketball. 3 or 4, we're going to talk about it. Are they going to get 3 or 4 teams in to the NCAA tournament? Ricky will give us his information on Mountain West basketball. With that, hey, we thank you guys all for watching. Always appreciate the super chat from DJ. We always appreciate all the commenters that are on here. We have such a great time on these live podcasts. I really appreciate you guys. Give it a like, subscribe. See you next time on the Big Mountain.